Hello, welcome to CV's Corner. Another beautiful Tuesday, and I'm so happy that you could join us today. And I am overjoyed because I have with me another wonderful young man who has been in my corner for over 30-something years. Another Buccaneer, another graduate of CVI, UVI, University of the Virgin Islands. And I'm talking about none other than my good friend and buddy, Dr. Dennis Tyrrell. Welcome to CV's Corner, Brother Dennis.
Thank you.
Why don't you say hello to the audience?
Thank you, CB. Thank you for welcoming me to have this time together and to share some thoughts with your audience about coping with COVID-19.
Well, thank you for coming. And I just want to let the audience know how far we've known each other.
Yeah.
You and I got to know each other in the early 80s. We were dorm mates at the University of the Virgin Islands, College of the Virgin Islands then.
At the time.
And we were the Scorpions. And
that's what we were called.
That's right. And as it happened, I migrated to Boston, and then you came up to Boston, and
a few years later,
and we started. You started to be a member of my church. And your wife and my wife, being in the same profession as dentists, have become very good friends. And so our family is just
interconnected.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's a pleasure to have you, my brother.
Thank you.
And you have done well, and I'm proud of you, and I'm honored to have you in my corner, like I said, literally and figuratively. Let me just tell the people about your accomplishments, a little bit about that. Of course, you are from the island of St. Kitts Nevis, and of course you migrated to St. Thomas, where he attained his BA in 1988. 1988, yes. And then he attained his master's degree at UMass Boston, and then his PhD at Boston College. And so Brother Dennis, I call him brother because he's a member of my church, and that's what we say at church. We call each other brother and sister. So you'll hear me call him Brother Dennis or Dr. Dennis. So that is interchangeable. And so you have been doing counseling for quite a bit now, and you have your own private practice.
Correct.
And you also do some counseling at Brandeis University.
Yes.
Tell us a little about that.
Yes. Myself and another graduate of Boston College, Martin Pierre, founded Ashmont Counseling back in 2008. And it's been a small practice. There's 3 of us in the practice, and we're located in Dorchester. We wanted to be in the neighborhood and offer first-rate, excellent service. And I would say that based on how busy we are, the community has embraced us, and they value the service that we provide. And I do that part-time, and on the other 2 days, I'm at Brandeis University in the Counseling Center. And there I'm a part of a much larger staff, and so I appreciate, how they say iron sharpens iron, so I appreciate being a part of a bigger staff there. And I wear a couple hats there as well. I'm the co-director of training. We have a training program where we train up-and-coming psychologists and social workers, and so I co-direct that program as well.
Well, that's awesome. You are giving back to the community. That's great. And it's interesting that I think it's for me to mention that you are a Christian psychologist. You are very proud of your Christian heritage, and how do you navigate through the psychology of things and being a Christian and believing in God and believing that God can heal and all of that? How do you navigate through all of that with people of different faiths, maybe, or people that don't even believe?
Firstly, I would say that my faith grounds me. And in order for me to do the work that I do, I have to believe that there's a force that's greater than myself, to help me sit with a client who would describe, their deepest pain, and me being able to say, there is a source that I'm tapped into that helps me to be the presence of love and the source of healing in that interpersonal interaction that I'm having with a client. So for clients who are also Christians and who believe in God, then I tell them from day one then that God can be in the session with us. If someone doesn't believe in God, well, I was trained as a secular clinician, and so I have the tools, to just work with them and help them to get better. Doesn't mean I don't pray for them, but I won't do it in the session.
Right.
Whereas someone who believes, we pray as part of the session.
Of course, and of course, the things that you'll tell them, from my little understanding, by the way, I minored in psychology, so I know a little bit. The things that we speak from a Christian perspective is not that far away from the psychology that you're trying to teach. The love, the positivity,
Right.
the believing in yourself that you can
Right.
accomplish
Right.
and you can do stuff. It's not far-fetched
Right.
from what
Right.
we believe
Right.
as Christians,
Right.
that I can do all things
Right.
if I would only believe.
Right. And from my perspective as a psychologist and a Christian, I see them, like you said, as interconnected. There are some who practice as psychologists and who don't necessarily believe. But I don't see a contradiction between me having an active faith and being an excellent psychologist at the same time.
All right. Well, that is great. That's a good introduction, because we really want to talk about mental health as it relates to this COVID-19 that we're experiencing. Can you just give us an overview as to what is mental health, what it is all about?
Mental health, for example, from a wellness perspective, means that you are having the resources to manage the stresses, the typical stresses that come up from day to day. As long as we are engaging with family, we're engaging with community, we're interacting with others, there are going to be opportunities for friction, for misunderstanding. And so that when we have that confidence that we have the resources to cope, then it says that we're experiencing good mental health. There are times, though, that based on the environmental circumstances, based on biological forces or genetics, that ability to cope with life, that ability to take the stress of life can become overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And that's when mental functioning starts to deteriorate. That's when you see a higher level of anxiety or maybe depression. Or someone may have gone through some really horrific things that have been traumatizing. And so now the brain being traumatized, that colors how that person experiences the world. So that, for example, someone with a trauma history can be easily triggered when they're in stressful situations. And then here they are in that moment, because they're triggered, now they're responding to that situation in the moment as if they were in the traumatic situation that happened previously.
Yes, I can only imagine. And with this pandemic that we are facing, one can imagine the anxiety level and the stress level of people going up, exponentially.
Oh yeah,
and so you have to deal with that on a regular basis. But how has that affected you personally and professionally?
Personally, there's been so many adjustments that I've had to make. So that, for example, at where I work in my private practice and also at Brandeis University, those places got closed pretty early on in the pandemic.
Right.
And so we've had to switch from seeing clients in person, where we're kind of this distance apart or even closer doing our work, to now going strictly onto a video format.
Right.
And so I wake up and I'm in my house. I go to work. I take a few steps and I'm at work in my house. And the kitchen where I have my dinner is at the kitchen table where I'm also doing my work. And so it's been a challenge. It's been quite a transition. And especially when it was colder, to be in the house for days on end without going out, that I was not accustomed to, and so it took some adjusting.
Right.
And then to have everyone again coexisting in the same space, for days at a time, and having none of the usual outlets, the stress level got elevated a little bit personally. Professionally, I would say that I've been as busy or probably busier than I've ever been.
I can imagine.
Because when I reached out to my clients to say, we have to switch to a telehealth or video format, maybe one or two said, I'll wait until this is over. But by far and large, everyone agreed to switch to the video format. And whereas in the past, I had maybe like a 10% no-show. These days, everyone shows up.
Oh wow!
Because
there's no way to go.
There's no way to go. Yeah, people are home, and also me being another outlet, for my clients in these stressful times, become a welcome resource.
Wow! And so I can imagine, of course, you being a professional, you have experienced some of those stresses. I can imagine people, and you know how to deal with that. But there are people who are experiencing those stresses as well. You have husbands and wives that are home, and their children are home. And from what I've been hearing, a lot of lawyers are getting calls because marriages are on the verge of disintegration. Do you see some of that in your practice, or can you speak to that to some degree? Because I know that you, being part of the church where I am, you kind of coordinate the couples ministry. So that's right up your alley. Talk to us about that.
I think it makes sense from a theoretical perspective, not necessarily from my personal experience in my practice, because the clients that I see, we've been in a working relationship for a while now. But in terms of understanding, the trends from a conceptual perspective, I could see why, you're saying, attorneys are getting busier, because if a couple is in a marriage and there has been some stress within that marriage, what they've learned as ways of coping, maybe not healthy coping, but that coping that involves some being able to distance themselves from each other. Now here they are being in the same space, living and working from home, for example.
Right.
And so whatever strain that was in the relationship, that's going to bubble to the surface, and there's no outlet to then say, well, I'm going to go and go do something fun, or I'm going to go and shop, just as a way of getting some space and getting some distance. So the things that have in the relationship that were problematic, it all comes to the surface now, and it has to be dealt with. And so unfortunately for some people, they may see contacting an attorney and proceeding with the divorce as the way to deal with all of the problems coming to the surface. Other ways of dealing with it would be to get some professional help.
Right. So one of the ways I know we in our community, in our corner, we try to keep the fire burning, so to speak, in marriages, and we have regular meetings to just talk about stuff. And so if you're not really talking about it, as you indicated, things kind of build up over time, and then it just blows up. And I know every individual has their own personal scenarios, and I'm not asking you to treat anybody in 20 minutes or 10 minutes. But one of the things we talk about when we do meet is knowing your partner's love language. And could you share a little of that? Maybe somebody who is listening can help them maybe to distress, if you will, by understanding what it is when we talk about knowing your partner's love language and how to speak that love language so as to, get things under control.
That's a really popular resource in terms of understanding your partner's love language. So what are those love languages? we talk about acts of service, quality time, physical touch,
Right.
affirmation, and what's the fifth one?
The fifth one would be time spent.
Quality time.
Quality time. We
Yes,
talked
yes.
about.
Uh-huh. So what happens is that there are times when our partner may be expressing love, but because it's not in the other person's language, it doesn't get experienced as love. So, for example, let's say, in my case, acts of service is, a love language for me.
Right.
And so, in this pandemic, I may be working much harder. I'm busier because now we've reduced from, two income to one because my wife's office is closed. And so I just see that, I embrace that as a challenge to, hey, do what it takes to make sure we keep, paying the bills.
Right.
Whereas my wife, who values quality time and is seeing less of me, may not necessarily, be experiencing me showing love towards her because now there's because now I'm busier and we're not able to spend as much time together.
Speaking her language.
I'm not speaking her language, and so as busy as I am, I have to then realize that in order for me to connect with my partner, I have to speak her language. I have to create time in the day. Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, but to intentionally create time in the day to say, this is our time together. Or let's say, my partner's love language is gifts. That was the fifth one.
That's right.
Then, when I'm going out, to do the regular shopping, again, because that's something that needs to be done, but taking that minute to say, you know what, let me stop by the florist, or let me get a nice gift or a card, to say, here, while I was out, I got this. And so even though, it does good for me to think that I'm going out to get the groceries to feed my family, it's going to mean a whole lot more for my partner if I'm coming back with a nice gift.
It shows that you're thinking about her.
Right.
All right. And
right.
so
loving her in the way that she can respond.
That's right. And I'm glad you said that, because sometimes we think, well, geez, I went out and buy groceries. Isn't that good enough for her? But that's not her love language.
Right.
She doesn't mean she don't appreciate the groceries.
Right.
But the fact that she wanted some quality time spent, that's important. And so that's one of the things that we as husbands and wives that are listening, you need to know what your husband's or your spouse's love language is and speak it often. I try to relate it to regular language. I say, if my language is Creole, speak Creole to me. Let's understand that. To put it in a way to understand. If all I understand is French and you speak in Spanish, we're not going to go anywhere.
Right.
So
Right.
the love language is the same thing. So great. And so we see a high incidence of disconnect and stress levels growing up, because I think one of the reasons is because people are not, they're not speaking the love language of their partner,
right.
and especially in this crazy time, things are just getting worse. Right. So if you're listening, and you know what your partner's love language is, please speak it. If your husband cut the grass and he loves the compliment, let him know that he did a good job. And of course, if your wife loves flowers, even if it's $5 worth, buy some flowers, because that will help decrease the stress. All right. One of the things that I've been hearing on television and among my circles is that this COVID-19 is affecting people of color in a disproportionate way. Can you talk to that to some degree, and how can we deal with that?
Yes, unfortunately, we're hearing that in communities, especially in the larger cities, we're noticing that individuals of color are becoming victims of COVID-19 at a much higher rate. What we understand is that there has long been health disparities where people of color may have less access, to quality health care.
That's right.
And so that when there are already underlying existing conditions that are not being, treated adequately, then along comes, a virus such as COVID-19, and so individuals who are already, having, some health risk now become even more vulnerable, to becoming susceptible to the disease. And so it's been talked about for years now that in communities of color, we don't have the same quality access to healthcare. And now I think this is one of the terrible consequences of it.
Right, and so and especially in I don't know for other communities, but I know mental health. It's like a stigma. If somebody has something with mental health, we tend not to talk about it in the family. We tend to keep it a secret. Are there some suggestions you can give us so people know that this is something that we ought not to be ashamed of? It is a disease like any other disease, and we need to seek professional help where we have to. I am saying that because I have heard a lot of younger people that are probably ready to get out of college, and they're worrying about whether they're going to get a job and stuff like that. And so the anxiety level has just skyrocketed, and some people just going to keep all of that stress in. So give us some ways to distress and how to control those kinds of scenarios.
But certainly, these are really stressful and uncertain times. And like as you mentioned, college students. I have some students on my caseload over at the university who are in that same situation where they're graduating and they've sent out hundreds of job applications, and because so many businesses are closed, they are having a really difficult time getting responses back. And so the level of stress is exponentially higher.
Right.
So a couple things that I've done in order to work with some of those students, first of all, is to help them not to personalize, not being able to to find a job, and to just kind of bring it back into perspective that yes, there is a larger worldwide pandemic. And everyone is being affected.
That's right.
Because a lot of times, we are sold, that vision that you're going to go to college, you're going to get educated, and you're going to have a job.
A good paying job.
A good paying job, and everything has been equal.
That's right.
But and so when something as drastic as COVID-19 has happened, and someone is having difficulty, finding a job. Sometimes there's still that tendency to personalize it. Well, maybe I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not sending out enough applications. So to really, validate that the stress is real, that they're going through.
Right.
And then also to, to encourage them to open up and tap into other supports, tap into other, help that's available, reaching out to other family members. So again, that they're not alone in dealing with the inordinate amount of stress that they're going through. Also, being a part of a support group where if they're able to tap into, for example, the university's career placement center, so that they can be in connection with professionals as well as other students who are on the same journey, on the same path, looking to find the next steps. And sometimes also just, being okay with, well, I may not work,
right.
for a few months, and I may have to go back home when that was not part of the plan.
Right.
And so being able to, roll with those adjustments, because everyone is forced to
right.
do that, in this season.
So it's not just you, and something is not wrong with you. It's something that nobody planned for, nobody knew. I mean, the toughest people are experiencing it. Governments that have been known to be leaders of the world are caving under this thing. So it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And so part of what you were talking about is ways of coping. So we call that healthy ways of grieving. Can you expand on that a little bit?
In terms of grieving, I want to take that on as a separate issue.
Okay.
But just in terms of coping with, the pandemic, one of the things that I find myself encouraging my clients over and over is to kind of monitor their intake of the news.
Yes.
Because whenever you turn it on, the TV on, or you turn on your social media devices, there's tons of information out there about the impact.
False and negative and all kinds of stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, and for some of my clients, I can see from week to week, their stress level rising. And when I ask, how much of the news that you're consuming, and someone was saying, I watch it all the time. And so part of the homework was, please take a break.
Take a break.
Go home and just get the headlines for like 30 minutes or 15 minutes, and then have that be it. So being able to monitor how much you're taking in, concerning the pandemic. Also, having healthy outlets. So, for example, I know as busy as I am now, and being in the house, one of the things that helps me is getting out, weather permitting, twice a day. Early in the morning, starting the day with a walk, and then later in the evening, going back again, just to having that kind of rhythm, having that kind of
Absolutely.
Outlet helps me to kind of burn off some of the extra stress. Also, being in community, as this pandemic has prevented us from gathering, in small groups or at each other's houses, or in a couples ministry. What I've really come to value is tuning in on a Sunday morning and listening to our service online, and at the same time having a chat where I'm hearing from other members that I haven't been able to see for a long time, or even for our small group meetings. Now we do that via Zoom, and again that's the way that we stay in touch with each other. One of the beautiful things that we're noticing, even in our couples ministry, is that since the pandemic, we're meeting more often now than we did before.
And more people are participating.
And more people are participating. Whereas before, sometimes we would have meetings when it was cold out, but then as soon as summer came around, the schedules got so packed that we were not able to meet. And I'm really encouraged, that we're prioritizing meeting through the Zoom format.
Well, that's great. And as you were mentioning, yes, you have to do things that will keep your mind occupied on other things, like taking walks and then just concentrating on nature and listening to the birds and the wind as the leaves are rustling, and you concentrate on